since sorry, since evolution is one of my favorite subjects, I'm going to give you a little walkthrough on the evolution bit. So come into the class, click on evolution, click on here. Why it matters. So the first thing I wanted to tell you, we have a lot of discussions about evolution being just a theory and all of that, you know, hair splitting nonsense that we talk about. The reality is that evolution is the best explanation we have for the reality we see. There is a reality out there. And the reality shows that there's a lot of things that life has in common, from the smallest bacterium, from the smallest virus that infects us, to the largest creature. There's a lot of things we have in common. There's a lot of diversity. Evolution explains all of that. And that's what we're going to be talking about this week. There's a lot of chapters this week, but don't despair, because I really just want you to touch on some of these things in some of the chapters. And then hopefully we're going to have some fun with playing the bunny game, and talking about evolution and how it affects you in real life, where we can observe it in real life. Click on the lecture info. So here's the chapters of the textbook. And like I said, chapter 11 is the one I want you to read in its entirety. Chapter 12, 13, 14, and 15. There's literally just one little snippet that I want you to look at for each of them. And those little snippets are actually mentioned. We go back to the overview real quick. For example, just 12.2, 13.1, and 14.1. Let's look at those real quick. So the reason why I wanted to, and I have my cat walking across my text. Of course she is. So 12.1. 12.1, I want you to look at just for the structure, the phylogenetic tree of life, and just kind of get an impression of where we are. Because we're just this little tiny little thing right there. So really, most of life is bacteria, archaea. In terms of variation, they have way more variation than we do. 13.1, prokaryotic diversity. Is that what I was going to talk about? Eukaryotic origins. That's what I wanted to. 13.2. This is the one. This is the one I really wanted to. Endosymbiosis. Where do mitochondria come from? Those kinds of things. Also, there's lots of evidence in mitochondria that speak for them being an organism that we captured way back when. So there's lots of different evidence, and it all speaks for the same explanation that evolution is real. The documents that help you through this. So definitely look at the tour guide this week, because the tour guide will tell you why, what I want you to focus on in the different chapters. You've got the PowerPoints, the concept of biology PowerPoints, and they probably should be not here, but probably in the PowerPoint folder, right? Wouldn't that be a good move to put them in there? Let's just move them in there, right? So, all right. The next thing, so you're looking at this. I have yet to figure out why sometimes it allows you to go to the next page and sometimes it doesn't. Demonstrations. There's a video that Bozeman talks about, and he does a really nice job. The only concern I have with him is when he says things like lizards develop the ability to eat plants, horses develop the ability to run fast and chew grass. Um, don't think of it as a purposeful act. It's not a purposeful act. It's a mutation. It's the thing that happens. The thing that starts evolution is a random mutation that makes a change. The change then is tested against, functionality. Like the functionality of the change is tested against the environment. If the thing that change caused makes your organism work better in the environment, then it's going to persist. If it makes it worse, it's not going to persist. That's basically how this whole thing works. And so there's a bunch of different examples in Bozeman gives some examples. I give some examples in the lab hand in the tour guide. So read through those, and then after you're done with that is when the fun starts, because that's when you get to your assignments. There's a lecture quiz. It contains all the chapters. It's like 8 questions from chapter 11 and 2 questions from chapters 12 through 15. 3 tries, as usually. Then the bunny game. So the bunny game, what I want you to do there is I want you to, so let me show you the game first. Actually, let me drag it in from this other screen here. So here's the game, and I gave you the link to the game, which should take you straight right there. If you click on this, you get this little simulation. You click and you animate. Now you got 2 little bunnies. When you look at that, here's the generation that keeps wandering. You make this thing go faster. And if you just let the bunnies run and you don't do anything, it takes 6 generations for them to take over the world. Of course, when the bunnies take over the world, they're going to run out of food very quickly, and then they're all going to die. So that's a bad plan. All right, so let's go see how we can fix this. You start over. And what I want you to do is I want you to make a plan. The things you can do, you're going to have to automate because there's nothing else you can do. But the kinds of things you can do is you can, for example, let's say in generation 2, I wait for generation 2. In generation 2, we're going to add a dominant mutation. Now, this dominant mutation, once you add it, it actually is going to not show up until generation 3, right? Because you actually need reproduction for this mutation to take. And so the mutation actually took in generation 3. It's getting a little crowded here, right? So let's add, in generation 4, we added the wolves, and the wolves come in that gray area, and they're doing some serious cleaning up. So wolves came in generation 4, and then you just let it run. Or if you want to, you can still add limited food, right? Which is the same kind of thing. It then happens at a different time. But I'm just going to let this run. And as you see, you can notice that there's a lot more brown ones now, right? Than there is white ones. And let's run this, and I'm going to speed this up. We're also already at generation 8 or 9. So the question is, how long is this going to go? And you can speed this up. And at some point, they will take over the world. Or you have a stable population, which could also happen. So when they take over the world, you can look at what you've got. So you can look at, can I size this? I guess you can size this. You can look at the numbers. So you had, move that way. So when you were done, so these are your total. These are your brown fur, and clearly you have way more with brown fur than you have with white fur at the moment it took over. And you can see how these numbers changed over time in the different generations. And you can watch this as it's going on too. So play with that. See what the different conditions. See if you can get them to live. So let's see who gets them. I mean, so I went to generation 11. Let's see how far you get. And like I said, go ahead and write down So in my case, I had prairie. I added my predator at generation 3. I added a dominant mutation at generation 4. I did not limit food. So I did not limit food. And then my results were that I had X number of brown ones and X number of white ones. And I lived for 11 generations. So that would be the kind of thing I would want you to write there. I hope this makes sense. And I hope you have a little bit of fun with that. Um, there is the lab version of the game where you can vary more things. You can give them floppy ears and bigger teeth and other things. And if you want you or your children to play the bunny game, the kids are going to have fun with that thing too. So that's the bunny game. And then last but not least, we've got a discussion board. And I want you to look at that. Um, Look at the videos, look at the explanations, and then take one of the scenarios and walk through it. Like explain it in your own words. So don't just tell me this is what evolution is. No, say, okay, I've listened to you explain how the giraffe works. I've listened to you explain how the lizard works. I can now explain how the penguin works. So I can now explain or explain why the rattlesnakes are losing their rattles in Texas. One of the scenarios, not all of them. Okay, each one of you, I want you to think about one of them. Um, like I said, hopefully this makes sense. If you're struggling with it, just go ask the questions, and hopefully you'll have some fun with it. Um, and yes, if you want to talk about religion, we can talk about religion because religion and evolution are not mutually exclusive. If anybody tells you otherwise, they're lying. And I can tell you from experience because I personally am a preacher's kid and I most certainly can understand how evolution works. So, hopefully, you get a good week this week, and hopefully, this walkthrough is going to help a little bit.